Wiley Dunne was tied to the tracks for cheating, spitting dust, and laughing. Because the outlaws didn't know the train they were counting on was full of his friends, and a whole lot of dynamite. Dust devils danced in the sun-baked streets of Redemption Gulch, a town where fortunes were won and lost quicker than a blink. The flickering gas lamps of the Golden Nugget Saloon cast long shadows, painting the card tables in a haze of anticipation and deceit. This was Wiley Snake Eyes Dunne's kind of town. Wiley wasn't your average card sharp. He had a reputation that preceded him, whispered in hushed tones from Tombstone to Santa Fe. They said he could read a man's soul in the reflection of his spectacles, that he could stack a deck faster than a rattlesnake could strike. But it wasn't just his skill that made him a legend, it was his audacity. Tonight, Wiley was playing high-stakes poker with the roughest hombres Redemption Gulch had to offer. Men with eyes like chips of flint and trigger fingers itching for action. Men who wouldn't hesitate to settle a debt with a bullet. Wiley, with a wry smile playing on his lips, was about to turn their world upside down. He was about to show them that in the game of life, sometimes you have to bet it all to win it all. The Golden Nugget's back room was thick with cigar smoke and the scent of cheap whiskey. A single oil lamp hung precariously above the green felt table, casting a sickly yellow glow on the faces gathered around it. Stacks of gold coins and thick wads of bills sat like miniature forts, each representing a man's hopes and dreams, or more likely his greed and desperation. Across from Wiley sat Black Bart Callahan, a hulking brute with a scarred face and a reputation for settling arguments with his fists. To Wiley's left was Doc Holliday, a former dentist-turned-gunfighter, whose calm demeanor masked a deadly precision. And rounding out the table was Crazy Joe Stark, a twitchy, unpredictable outlaw known for his wild bets and even wilder temper. The stakes were high, higher than Wiley had ever played for before, but he wasn't sweating. He had a plan, a scheme so audacious it would either make him a legend or get him buried 6 feet under. As the cards were dealt, Wiley's snake eyes gleamed with anticipation. This wasn't just a game, it was a carefully orchestrated dance, and Wiley was about to lead. The game wore on, hours melting into a blur of bluffing, betting, and barely concealed threats. Wiley, with his signature poker face, seemed to be winning hand after hand, raking in piles of chips with an almost unsettling ease. Black Bart grew increasingly agitated, his knuckles white as he gripped his cards. Doc Holliday remained unnervingly calm, his eyes narrowed like a hawk sizing up its prey. Crazy Joe, true to his name, swung between manic laughter and sudden bursts of anger, slamming his fist on the table when he lost a hand. The tension in the room was a tangible thing, thick enough to cut with a knife. The air crackled with unspoken accusations and simmering resentment. Then it happened. Doc Holliday, with a slow, deliberate movement, reached across the table and snatched Wiley's wrist. "I believe," he said, his voice dangerously soft, "that our friend Mr. Dunne has been dealing from the bottom of the deck." The room went silent. All eyes turned to Wiley, who simply smiled, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "Now, Doc," he drawled, "whatever gave you that idea?" Wiley's smile widened, but his eyes remained cold. "Innocent as a newborn calf, Doc, but if you insist." With lightning speed, Wiley flipped the table, sending cards, chips, and whiskey bottles flying. A chaotic brawl erupted. Black Bart roared and charged, while Crazy Joe pulled a hidden derringer. Doc Holliday, ever the professional, calmly drew his revolver. Wiley, despite being outnumbered, moved with surprising agility, dodging punches and kicks. He landed a solid blow on Black Bart's jaw, sending him staggering. But Crazy Joe's shot grazed his arm, drawing a hiss of pain. The fight raged through the saloon, smashing furniture and terrifying onlookers. Finally, the outlaws, fueled by rage and whiskey, overwhelmed Wiley. They pinned him to the ground, his arms twisted behind his back. Black Bart, his face contorted with fury, spat on Wiley. "You think you're so smart, Dunne? We'll see how smart you are when the train comes through." With a cruel laugh, they dragged Wiley out of the saloon and into the night. The sounds of Redemption Gulch faded as they hauled him towards the edge of town, a dark and ominous fate awaiting him. The cold steel of the train tracks pressed against Wiley's cheek. The outlaws had bound him tightly, using thick ropes that bit into his skin. The desert wind howled like a banshee, carrying the faint, distant whistle of an approaching train. He could feel the vibrations in the ground, a growing tremor that signaled his impending doom. Black Bart stood over him, a triumphant sneer on his face. "Any last words, Snake Eyes?" he sneered. Wiley looked up at him, his eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "Just one," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "You fell right into my trap." Black Bart's brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about?" But Wiley didn't answer. He simply closed his eyes and waited, a faint smile playing on his lips. He knew what was coming. They all did. The only question was who would be laughing last. The train whistle grew louder, closer, promising either a gruesome end or the beginning of a spectacular revenge. Wiley took a deep breath. The game was about to change. Weeks earlier, in a dimly lit cantina in a forgotten border town, Wiley sat hunched over a map of Redemption Gulch. Around him were gathered his loyal crew: Dynamite Dave, a grizzled explosives expert; Quick Draw Kate, a sharpshooter with nerves of steel; and Silent Sam, a master of disguise and infiltration. "The key," Wiley had said, tracing a finger along the train tracks, "is the element of surprise. They think they're setting a trap for me, but they're the ones walking into it." He explained how he would intentionally get caught cheating, knowing that Black Bart and his gang would be too blinded by greed and revenge to see the bigger picture. He'd ensured the cheating was obvious enough to trigger a response, but subtle enough to not get him killed outright before his plan could begin. He detailed the plan to get his crew onto the train, disguised as passengers and railway workers. Dave would plant explosives strategically, while Kate would provide cover from a distance. Sam would handle the inside work, ensuring that everything went according to plan. "This train," Wiley concluded, a wicked glint in his eyes, "is our ticket to payback." Inside the rumbling locomotive, Dynamite Dave, disguised as a weary stoker, shoveled coal into the fiery furnace, his eyes scanning for the opportune moment. Quick Draw Kate, dressed as a prim and proper schoolteacher, sat quietly in a passenger car, a rifle concealed beneath her voluminous skirts. Silent Sam, posing as a conductor, moved stealthily through the train, ensuring everyone was in position. Each member of Wiley's crew knew their role perfectly. They were a well-oiled machine, forged in the fires of countless heists and daring escapades. They trusted Wiley implicitly, knowing that his plans, however crazy they seemed, always had a method to their madness. They knew the risks were high. If their cover was blown, they would be facing a heavily armed gang of outlaws in a confined space. But they were ready. They were loyal to Wiley, and they were hungry for revenge against those who had wronged him. The train lurched and screeched as it approached Redemption Gulch, carrying not just passengers and cargo, but a storm of retribution waiting to be unleashed. The clock was ticking. The ground trembled as the train roared into Redemption Gulch, a monstrous iron beast spewing smoke and fire. Black Bart and his gang watched with gleeful anticipation, expecting to witness Wiley's gruesome demise. But the engineer, under Silent Sam's subtle direction, slammed on the brakes just moments before impact. The train screeched to a halt mere inches from Wiley's face. Dust billowed, obscuring the scene. The outlaws, momentarily stunned, stared in disbelief. Black Bart, recovering first, let out a frustrated yell. "What in tarnation?" That was the signal. A series of explosions rocked the train, sending shrapnel and debris flying. Dynamite Dave had timed it perfectly, targeting key structural points and creating maximum chaos. Simultaneously, Quick Draw Kate opened fire from the passenger car windows, picking off outlaws with deadly accuracy. The train, instead of being Wiley's tomb, was now his Trojan horse. It was time for the real game to begin. Wiley was smiling, the ropes around him suddenly feeling a lot looser. The train doors burst open, and more of Wiley's crew poured out, shedding their disguises and brandishing weapons. What were moments ago unassuming passengers were now battle-hardened gunslingers. A hail of bullets ripped through the air, forcing the outlaws to scatter for cover. Silent Sam, discarding his conductor's uniform, moved with deadly precision, disabling the outlaws' horses and cutting off their escape routes. The element of surprise was absolute. Black Bart's gang, caught completely off guard, were struggling to mount a defense. The dusty streets of Redemption Gulch transformed into a chaotic battleground. Explosions continued to rock the train, adding to the mayhem. Passengers screamed and ducked for cover, while the outlaws desperately returned fire, their bullets ricocheting off the train and nearby buildings. The air was thick with smoke, gunpowder, and the deafening roar of gunfire. Wiley's plan was unfolding exactly as he'd envisioned. A full-blown war had arrived in Redemption Gulch. The odds were shifting. The shootout escalated into a full-scale war. Bullets whizzed through the air, shattering windows and tearing holes in the wooden facades of the buildings. Outlaws dove behind overturned wagons and hastily constructed barricades, returning fire with a vengeance. Wiley's crew, expertly trained and fiercely loyal, pressed their advantage, pushing the outlaws further and further back. Dynamite Dave, not content with just setting explosions on the train, began lobbing sticks of dynamite into the outlaws' positions, sending them scattering in panic. Quick Draw Kate, perched on the roof of the Golden Nugget, provided sniper support, taking down key targets with deadly accuracy. One outlaw attempted to flee on horseback, but Silent Sam, using a grappling hook and rope, swung across the street like a wild man, lassoing the outlaw and sending him crashing to the ground. The scene was a whirlwind of chaos and destruction, a testament to Wiley's meticulously planned and flawlessly executed scheme. Redemption Gulch was living up to its name, but instead of redemption, it was witnessing pure, unadulterated chaos. With a final tug, Wiley snapped the last of his bonds. He rose to his feet, dusting off his coat and retrieving a hidden six-shooter from his vest. A wicked grin spread across his face. "Looks like the game's not over yet, boys," he announced, his voice ringing out above the din of battle. Wiley charged into the fray, a whirlwind of bullets and cunning tactics. He used the chaos to his advantage, darting between cover and flanking the outlaws with ease. He wasn't just a gambler, he was a master strategist, able to read the battlefield and anticipate his opponent's moves. He disarmed one outlaw with a swift kick, then used the man as a human shield while taking down two more with well-placed shots. He leaped over a burning wagon, landing gracefully and taking aim at another group of outlaws. His six-shooter barked, sending lead flying and bodies dropping. Wiley's snake eyes Dunne had entered the game, and the odds had just shifted dramatically once again. The outlaws were about to learn that cheating at cards was the least of their worries. Black Bart, his face a mask of fury, emerged from behind a burning building, his gun drawn and aimed directly at Wiley. Most of his gang were down, the remaining few scattered and demoralized. He'd been outplayed, outsmarted, and utterly humiliated. "This ain't about the money, is it, Dunne?" Black Bart growled, his voice hoarse. "This is about Sarah." Wiley's face hardened. The mention of Sarah brought a flicker of pain to his eyes. "You remember her now, Bart, the woman you swore you loved, the woman you left for dead after you stole the gold from the mine." Black Bart spat on the ground. "She was a fool, and the gold was mine for the taking." "That gold wasn't yours, Bart, it belonged to the town, and Sarah, she was worth more than all the gold in the world." Wiley's hand tightened around his gun. "You took everything from me, Bart, now I'm here to return the favor." The air crackled with tension. The showdown had arrived. This was more than just a battle, it was a reckoning. The two men stood frozen, the only sound the crackling of the flames around them. Then with a simultaneous movement they drew and fired. Black Bart's shot went wide, clipping the side of a building. Wiley's shot found its mark, striking Black Bart in the chest, but Bart was not done yet. As Bart stumbled, he pulled the pin from a stick of dynamite he had been holding behind his back. He lunged at Wiley, intending to take him down with him. Wiley, reacting instantly, dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. The dynamite exploded with a deafening roar, sending debris and flames soaring into the air. The force of the explosion knocked Wiley off his feet, but he managed to scramble to safety behind a sturdy wooden crate. When the smoke cleared, Black Bart was gone, reduced to nothing more than scattered remains. The battle was over. Wiley had won. The town of Redemption Gulch had been redeemed, not by law but by revenge. The remaining outlaws, seeing their leader defeated and their ranks decimated, quickly surrendered or fled into the surrounding desert. Wiley's crew rounded up the survivors, disarming them and securing the town. The gold that Black Bart had stolen was recovered to be returned to the townsfolk, a small measure of justice served. The streets of Redemption Gulch were littered with debris and bodies, a grim reminder of the battle that had just taken place. But beneath the destruction, a sense of relief and hope began to emerge. The reign of terror was over. Black Bart and his gang would no longer prey on the innocent. Wiley surveyed the scene, his face etched with exhaustion but also with a sense of satisfaction. He had come to Redemption Gulch seeking revenge, but he had also brought a measure of justice and peace. He'd also reminded all those who dared cross him that he was not to be trifled with. His scheme, audacious and dangerous, had succeeded. The outlaws' plot to kill him and continue their reign had been utterly foiled. He'd flipped the cards on them all. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Wiley and his crew prepared to leave Redemption Gulch. They had accomplished what they set out to do: avenge Sarah, recover the stolen gold, and send a clear message to anyone who dared cross them. The townsfolk, grateful for their liberation, offered them what little they had. But Wiley, true to his character, refused. "We didn't do this for reward," he said. "Just make sure you use that gold to build a better future for yourselves." With a final nod, Wiley and his crew mounted their horses and rode off into the sunset, their silhouettes disappearing into the vast expanse of the desert. They carried with them not just the satisfaction of a job well done, but also the weight of their past and the uncertainty of their future. But one thing was certain: their legend would live on, whispered in hushed tones around campfires and card tables from Tombstone to Santa Fe. Wiley's particular winnings were the satisfaction of revenge and the loyalty of his crew. The thrill of the game was reward enough. Weeks later, in a smoky saloon in Dodge City, Wiley, Snake Eyes, Dunne sat at a poker table, a fresh deck of cards in his hands. The air was thick with anticipation, the stakes were high, and the players were eager to test their luck against the legendary gambler. He shuffled the cards with practiced ease, his fingers moving with a grace that belied their deadly skill. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the faces around the table, sizing up his opponents, searching for any tell, any weakness. He dealt the cards, his movements smooth and deliberate. As he looked up, a flicker of a smile played on his lips, a hint of the adventure and danger that lay ahead. A new mark sat across from him, a known associate of the railroad. Wiley's eyes gleamed. The game was on. The legend of Wiley, Snake Eyes, Dunne continued. The cards were his weapons, deception his shield, and fortune his ever-elusive goal. The West was wild, and Wiley was willed.